Welcome, everybody, to another user spotlight. My name is Steve Drost, and with me, as always, of course, we have Will Kaplan. Will and I, obviously, both from the Quivr CRM team, where our job is simple. How can we help financial advisors run their practice as efficiently as possible? Now, Will, today we have our friend Allen. Allen is, I don't know, it's kind of like parents, right? You're not supposed to have your favorite child, but
Uh-oh.
Alan is and I would say this if he wasn't here, but Alan is without a doubt one of my favorite users, and I'm really excited today to get into the weeds a little bit with him about what he is doing with Quivr. That is pretty unique. So yeah, without further ado, Alan, I'll have you. Why don't you introduce yourself, explain a little bit about who you are, and tell our users why you're one of our favorites.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Pleasure to be here. I'm Allen Mueller, founder of 7 Saturdays Financial. Been in business about 3.5 years and have been actively using Quivr for about 15 months. Our firm primarily serves pre-retirees, retirees. So a lot of our workflows and tools are catered around that. Currently serving about 30 households, and ultimate goal as a solo advisor to get somewhere between 40 and 45. But Quivr's been just phenomenal in helping us get efficient and making sure that things don't slip through the cracks. So really excited to talk about it.
Awesome. I love it. And I do want to say for our listeners as well, I know some people hear 30 clients and they might not be very impressed by that, but Alan has an awesome firm. Your clients are great. Your KPIs are phenomenal. And I'm really excited to hear about your new focus, which really the entire time you've been on Quivr is how can you be as efficient as possible, right? How can you save those 30 seconds? How can you save those 5 clicks? So I just want to throw it right back to you, Alan. When you look at what you've built on Quivr in the last 15 months, what do you think is the number one, number two, just thing that maybe thing, whatever you want to say, that Quivr's really helped you do?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things is just getting data in the right places. One of the things I love about Quivr is that everything has a spot, like the meeting module, for example, right? Like it's a very discrete place to put notes for a particular client for a particular meeting. It's not just a stream of consciousness notes on a client file. So getting the right data in the right place. I use Zapier as an intermediary, but like Calendly is the scheduling tool, right? How do we get Calendly data into Quivr? Zapier is the link there. But being able to take like the meeting date. When a client schedules a meeting, whether they're a prospect or a new client or a current client, getting that meeting date into the meeting object and maybe creating a meeting object if it's not already there. Taking the scheduling tool notes that the client says are important to talk about and dropping that in the meeting object so that it's very easy to prep for. Everything's in one place, streamlining the prep process for the meeting. So that's, creating those links, getting data flowing in the right areas has been a big one. And then playing around with list views and the reporting capabilities, just being able to see all the relevant data and build a report for anything I want in Quivr. We were just talking about, I can click my households list and I can get to any outside system that I have for a household. So like there's a custom link in a household view that takes us to a household's Holistiplan page, right to their page. So I'm not going to holistiplan.com and I'm not scrolling through my client list. It goes right to their page. So if I'm working on things in 3 or 4 different tools for clients, I can one click, I'm right there in each one.
I love it. And our listeners could probably already hear that you have a very operational and process driven mind, which is great. You just rattled off a lot of awesome stuff. But what I took away from what you just mentioned is what you want to do. And then you maybe this is fair, maybe it's not, but then you reverse engineered the data inside of Quivr to provide yourself with very easy access to what you want to do. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
So when we describe, for example, Calendly, you want to use Calendly to have a client schedule meetings. Great. Nobody ever wants to email back and forth for times. I love that. But then once they schedule that, you now know that you want to run your prep and your follow-up inside of Quivr, correct? So then how do we get that data from Calendly into Quivr automatically and then presented back to you in a fashion, which is that list view? So a list view, for those of you listening who aren't familiar with Salesforce or familiar with Quivr, a list view just lets you show any field or any specific set of data that you want. So you can have column A be all of your contacts and column B be all of their birth dates if you want, right? But what you've done is you've taken all of those meetings as they get scheduled in, because you practice Surge, correct?
Yeah, we do.
Yep. So you take those meetings in and you have a view now that's automatically populated that shows you every household, every meeting. And then I think you alluded to the prep and the follow-up and all of that as well.
Correct. Yeah. So we're running
Can you elaborate
meetings
on that? Like how is that working in practice?
Yeah, basically running meetings through Quivr. So we'll draft an agenda, put it in there. The client will, of course, they have a couple things that are important to talk about during the meeting that'll carry over. So we'll have that right in front of us. But we've also got themes for like spring and fall. We're talking about we're trying to target some of the similar topics with all of our clients. So maybe 80% of it is the same for every client, and then the last 20% is customized based on something that we identified in the prior meeting or the client mentioned in the scheduling tool that they want to talk about. Even having the ability to, like, in our workflow for surge meetings, like the last step after we're closing out a surge meeting is go create the next one. So like it's fall right now, we're creating spring surge meeting objects. And if there's something I want to talk about in the spring, I'm going to go put it right there. So it's right in front of me. I'm not having to remember. I'm not having it on a Excel file somewhere. Again, everything has a place.
Thank you for using that feature how it's meant to be used. It's that
We got
giant
one. We
yeah,
got
no,
one.
it's meant to be the giant Post-it note for every single client, so that way when you are coming back to that meeting, and I hope you and others are as well, where, you get emails from clients between meetings, and 9 out of 10 times, they don't wanna talk about it now, they wanna talk about when they meet with you next, and that is a perfect spot. Their 401k S&P 500 option changed. Okay, we don't need to meet, but I'll add it to our agenda for the next conversation, and we'll make sure that you're good, and we'll look at your 401k during the meeting and make sure it's still invested in line with your, IPS or what have you. No, I love that. So the theme with you then is how can we get as much data into Quiver as possible so that we can then leverage it to be as efficient as possible?
Yeah, exactly. Just saving time and eliminating those little tasks that somebody has to do, but can be automated.
Alan, for those agendas that you were talking about for the meetings, is that something you're creating? Is it AI creating that for you? Like, where are those coming from?
Yeah, good question. So spring and fall, we kind of have themes. We want to tackle certain things for everybody, but it's really the manual process. I haven't found a way to totally systematize it and make it automatic, but yeah, I would say 80% of it's the same for everybody, 20% customized, and we just have to put in the legwork to figure out what that 20% is going to be.
Yeah, the reason I ask is obviously, I mean, AI is such a hot topic these days, and people want to slap it onto every little last thing, but you can run a really efficient. I do think, I mean, I think that you're one of our sort of like best examples of really having the efficiency component dialed. And like, I think it's really refreshing to see someone that is not necessarily leveraging all of that, like, hey, it's just going to do it for me, but still getting really efficient, really good client service, really detailed into like all of the things that we would want to cover. And it's really just as simple as saying, like, we talk about some stuff in spring, we talk about some stuff in fall, and that's how we run it. You don't need all that other extra like bells and whistles to get to that level of like really good client service. I think that's pretty awesome. It's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, and I do use some AI tools for certain things, but as far as like overarching, this thing's going to run my business, like, I mean, there's just, in my opinion, there's just too much slop. And like, if I were to try, like, hey, create me an agenda for this client for, the spring meeting, like 95% of it, I feel like is going to be crap, and I'm going to have to just go redo it anyway.
No,
Yeah, that's definitely.
and that's job security, right? Because if AI could do it, then no, I kid. Okay, so you mentioned you're at 30 clients now and you're still growing. Can you maybe walk us through how you're utilizing maybe Quivr, Zapier, Calendly, or whichever tools you're utilizing in that prospect process? How you're leveraging the technology to grow efficiently as well?
Yeah, good question. So we use a 3 meeting prospect process where we essentially deliver a light financial plan at the end of it. So there's a lot of steps in there. My colleague Marie, she's putting in a lot of data into Holistiplan and Quanti and Income Lab. Obviously, getting the data from the prospect is a precursor to that. So we've got a pretty robust workflow that as soon as someone schedules an intro meeting in Calendly, which is the first step, it's going to create a household. We've got Zapier, of course, the link, but it's going to create a household in Quivr. It's going to create a contact under that household. And then whenever that person emails, everything's tied to that particular household now because we have that email link as a contact. It's also going to kick off a workflow, which is our prospect process workflow based on that. And it's going to create a meeting object in the meeting module. So basically setting up the framework for how we're going to run this prospect process all off of them booking the intro call and the information that they put in.
I love that, and and it's interesting too because I know some people they might get overwhelmed by hearing all of the things that are happening right there. But again, if you just reverse engineer it and say, okay, if somebody schedules the intro meeting, I know I'm going to want to meet with them and I'm going to want to do these 17 things, and this is going to be my cadence. If you can draw it on a whiteboard, you can build it in Quiver. And if you can't or you don't have that desire to, come to office hours, hire a consultant. I mean, a few $100 goes a very, very, very long ways in automating everything you just mentioned. But that is great. If you I have a very specific question. So let's assume the first time you got it built out. Did it go perfect?
Never.
So so then what you just had to make a few updates and then did it go better the second time?
Yeah, I mean, there's little things that I didn't anticipate, like there were some certain things that weren't working properly. So I realized that, hey, it can't really tie the email to the household. It has to tie the email address to a contact within the household. So then I had to create a contact under the household as part of the workflow. But it's really just an experiment. Like, hey, if something's not working, but it's almost there, and Zapier actually makes it really easy to diagnose where it went wrong. Figure out what the problem is, and then just go again, reverse engineer it. But yeah, it's been tweaked, and like our prospect workflow wasn't perfect the first time we came out, and we identified some things like almost a circular process. Like, oh well, there's a step after Marie's taking care of some data entry, but she doesn't have the data until the next step. So we had to reverse some things and retweak it. But yeah, everything is an experiment. Nothing is permanent, and it's very easy in Quivr to drag and drop a workflow and fix something in 5 seconds.
So I go on record a lot of the times saying that it takes 3 iterations to get it close to done. Well, the first time you have a general idea, you whiteboarded it, you built it, you identify some pretty obvious things like, oh, I need a contact, right? I need to build that contact through my Zapier integration, right? And then maybe the second time you identified that Marie needed information, at part D, and you were trying to have her do part C, so you had to flip the order in some form or fashion. But then what I find is usually after the second, maybe third iteration, you're not perfect because you're still going to make little tweaks here and there, but you're, I would say, pretty dang functional. Is that the experience? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's accurate. And there's always going to be tweaks. I think we're always going to be optimizing and improving things. But if it's 95% of the way there and it's not at all manual, I think that's pretty good.
I love it. And then you can use that knowledge that you learned in the prospect process and apply it to other areas because now you know the contact and this and that. You pick up that knowledge while doing it. Will, I think you were going to say something.
I had a question because we've kind of been dancing around this a little bit. Alan, you and I have talked a fair amount offline. I know that you're sort of like leveled up in terms of Quivr and you have a good understanding of how a lot of this stuff works. Who owns the stuff in your firm now? Are you still doing the majority of the development? Have you passed it off to other people in the firm? I've got an idea for a new process. Are you building it or are you having Marie build it? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, so she's getting more and more involved and more comfortable with it. I'm still managing kind of the architecture of it. I'd probably just my personality, I wouldn't feel comfortable totally handing that off. But, I like to have my hands in it and be very hands-on with it. But no, she's very good about identifying like, hey, this isn't working right. We need to change A, B, C, and getting that feedback.
Do you think do you think if you needed to, she could go in and do it all?
I think so. Yeah, she's been in Quivr long enough that she knows kind of what's under the hood and how to fix things as they need to be adjusted.
That's awesome. I love that knowledge is sort of like trickling down too. I think that's fantastic. Speaking of knowledge trickling down, I think that you're also sort of one of our unique users in that it's my understanding you have a Quivr study group.
Yeah, there's a small group of us that have gotten together and taken things offline, off the office hours, and basically just showcasing like here's how we're using Quivr and helping others improve, helping others learn, showing some of the cool tricks that we found.
I think that's great. I mean, that's actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but Quivr came out of a study group.
Really?
And where I started with Salesforce was also in a study group where it was like, hey, I want to do some cool stuff. Is anybody else interested? And like, it's such a great way to do this because you get to see how other people use some of these tools. Like, so for, other people that might be listening that are Quivr users, this can be kind of cool to grab a couple of other people and say like, hey, would you be interested in talking about, how we use it? And then I also know from having conversations with some of the individuals in that group, we got to like, multiple times I've had hey, Alan built this really cool thing. I want it. How do I do that? And so I think that that's also like a testament to the power of those groups is that like you get to see those really cool things that other people have done. I want that for my practice. How would I do that? And you can either come back to us, sometimes the study groups themselves. Like for Steve and I, that was definitely, we're sharing a lot of that information. And it's just to me, the power of something like Quivr is the community and where we're getting like this kind of, I'm doing this, it's working really well for me. I'm going to share and evangelize this particular, process or layout or whatever but then you get the same iterative, like we talked about having to rebuild workflows or rebuild this stuff. Like you get the same, like, well, I just tweaked this little thing and now I like it even more. And then you're like, oh yeah, I should have done that. Or like, I can't believe I didn't think of that. Like, I've had those experiences myself. And so I think it's really cool that you guys are doing that because it's just such a powerful way to learn the system, prove the system, and make your practices better. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a great use of time. Just again, for those new ideas, right? You see something really cool and you're like, I want that. How do I get that?
Yeah. But the theme though, and we do know a decent amount about the study group because we just do. People come to office hours, they ask questions, they'll shoot us emails, and what Will said of Alan's doing this or the other members are doing that. What I like about it is it's not just I want to build a really cool workflow because it looks really cool. It's I want to be more efficient or do a better job for my clients in this topic, and I can do that if I implement this in Quivr, right? So it's not just like I'm moving something from this box to that box or, taking jelly beans out of one bag and putting them in the other. It's no, I'm actually trying to move my practice forward, be more efficient. And then Quiver is the tool to help me do that. That's what I think is really cool. Like the ideas that are coming out of that study group they're awesome. And also selfishly, you guys give us ideas and a lot of our updates have came in from that study group. We need more of those. We got to get more going.
It's awesome.
No, that's great. Will, do you have anything else to add on that?
I don't think so. I mean, one of the things that I guess that came out of that study group that I really love is, I call it sort of the cheat sheet, single sign-on type stuff. But the idea that you can take links to other tools that you commonly use and drill down to the specific, the way where I started using this originally was for my file system and for eMoney. And I was so tired of having to log into eMoney and do the 1Password stuff and then go to that particular client. The idea that you can just grab those URLs and drop them into Quivr. I know people listening are going to be like, hold up, I need to know how to do this. How does it work? The whole bit. Because it is something that, it is a little bit of a manual process as you have build it out the first time, but it pays so many dividends. And I mean, you alluded to that earlier, Alan, as well. This idea of you just go to Quivr and you click into whatever you need. And if you need Holistiplan and your planning software and maybe Orion or whatever other, all of these tools open, is just kind of like click, 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 new window, new window, new window, and you're off and running. And you've got them all up at the same time. It's a really cool, easy way to get access to a bunch of stuff that doesn't slow your system down. It's relatively easy. Kind of anybody can update it, but it's neat. It's I think a great shortcut to anyone's environment.
Yeah, that's one of the first things that I put in place when I onboarded with Quivr. And it was a little bit of a manual process to grab all those URLs and create custom objects on the household for them. But now we just put it in a workflow. Like when we're onboarding a new client, there's a step like grab all these links, put them in their household.
And then your return on time is you use them one time and you come out ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? The first time you click on it, you saved yourself that click. No, that's great. Alan, is there anything else that you're doing that you want to share? Anything else that's saving you a lot of time, you're really happy about, you wish you would have stumbled upon a little earlier in your process?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit late to the party when it came to workflows. Even before I got on Quivr, I was pretty new to workflows. So that was, I was a couple of years into my business, but by the time I started formalizing workflows in a system, prior to that, it was all on an Excel spreadsheet. And that's fine when you've got 10 or 15 clients, but you start getting more than that. Everybody's in a different stage. Stuff kind of goes sideways. But yeah, just getting workflows organized and not really having to keep it all in your mind where everybody's at, having a system for that, I think that's just been transformative. Like the onboarding workflow was the first one I ever built because there's so many steps. You're onboarding multiple clients, everybody's in a different stage, but being able to keep that organized and then that idea, seeing how much efficiency it injected into the practice and how much more at peace you feel when you've got a system and you feel like you got it together, just carried over to okay, we need a lot more workflows because we've got all these processes that we do over and over and we don't want things to slip through the cracks, but we don't want to be constantly thinking about it. So that was the biggest turning point, was building that first workflow, and it kind of feels scary and it feels permanent, but everything's adaptable, nothing's permanent. It's all an experiment.
How long has Marie, your support individual, how long has she been working with you?
I've been working with her since January, so about 11 months now.
Okay. The reason I ask is it's tough sometimes. I think that people assume that I had the perfect workflows from day one, right? I'm some operations and process nerd, which is a fair assumption, right? I didn't make a workflow until after I hired, right? Like, I guess this is kind of a trust tree here, right? Yeah, I didn't. And it was because as long as I was working by myself, what do I need a workflow for? I know exactly what I'm doing. I use singular tasks and just tracked everything in one task. For an account application, I knew I sent it to them at this day. I knew what I was doing, but then I hired. And then I realized that wasn't going to work, passing an individual task back and forth. And that leads to the, mom almost quit. I almost fired my mom story. So when you mentioned that you were late to the game on workflows, I actually don't think you are. I think you were fairly actually right on time. And I share this because some of our users, specifically those that, may not be operationally, energized as much by operations, I think sometimes they feel like ashamed, or they feel like I need workflows because everybody tells me I need workflows. When in reality, a workflow is just a way to document exactly how you want something done and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. But when you add that second person, or you add a zero to your number of clients, it just gets significantly harder to do those things without having a very formulated and well documented, way of doing something. So I'm actually not surprised at all by your journey with workflows.
Yeah, and it did result in a lot fewer of those waking up at 3 in the morning, like, oh my God, did I do this for that client? Because yeah, everything will get done if you do it without a workflow, but it gets done in a very panicked way, and it's very haphazard, and things might slip through the cracks. And oh, we didn't add this new account to Right Capital because it wasn't in a workflow somewhere, or we did a donor advised fund contribution, we didn't add it to the tax letter, so guess what? Now it's January, we're creating the tax letter, and now we have to go back and remember everything that we did. Like, just kind of doing your future self a favor with all of those steps, and getting ahead of things, I guess, is a big perk.
I love that.
I'm so glad that you shared that part of it, because all that weight that you're able to just let go of in your practice, because like, I took it through the system. Everybody kind of gets the same. It's not all different. And I don't have to keep, like, I mean, for me, when I was practicing, it was head goes on the pillow and then list just starts to churn. Right. And once I got into Salesforce, I was able to let go of that because I knew it was in my CRM, and like, I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. And I remember this like particular month, it was year end. I mean, kind of similar time to where we are right now, and not having that panic of like, did I do all the RMDs? Did we talk about all the Roth conversions to the people? Like, I felt so much better just because it wasn't in my head anymore. And like, I'm so glad that you brought that part up, because I think a lot of advisors struggle with that. And sometimes it's hard to own it, because it's like, we live in the Instagram filter world of like everybody's practice is perfect and nobody has any of these like panic moments. But the reality of it is like we're all kind of doing the same stuff. Everybody's, having that panicked feeling. I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think it is somewhat universal.
Yeah, and it's not a great feeling, but the more we can systematize, the more we can get it out of our head on paper and into a system. I mean, it just helps with a lot of things, burnout, etc.
And then insight as well, the sleeping, help you sleep better. There's not one thing I love about being a part of the Quivr team is I get to talk to so many advisors, and kind of like financial advisors can ask normal people questions that maybe most people can't. Like me, I can ask somebody how much they make, and I usually don't get a weird look, because if they're asking me a question about should they sell their truck or should they do this, like in passing, I'm very quick to just ask, well, how much do you make? And I can do that, right? And what's neat about Quivr is we can kind of on this side of the desk a little bit ask advisors maybe questions that not everybody else would ask. I don't know, Will, is that fair?
I think it is a weird thing, right?
But
Because
but
we
one thing
do
I've
get,
noticed is every person that owns their firm has those mornings where they wake up at 3 a.m. and nobody's firm is perfect. Nobody's is. So don't believe the Instagram filter. We're all working to get a little bit better, but I can tell you right now, nobody's perfect, even if they, maybe think they are. But awesome. Alan, is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, that's really the big stuff. When it comes to, we've talked a lot about systematizing and automating, and it seems really intimidating for folks, but everything's a baby step. Like, I didn't have all this stuff figured out when I started my firm. You kind of have to go like fumble your way through the motions a lot of times with the work and onboarding process, for example, right? You need to fumble through it a few times before you even know what a workflow would look like. But the faster that you can get it on paper and then off paper into a system, it's going to pay itself back multiple times over, like peace of mind, time savings, etc. So you just need to get started, I guess I would say.
I agree. I love it. Those are great last words for today. Alan, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. It's been cool to watch what you've done on the system. Keep meeting with your mastermind and have those people continue to come back to us and give us great ideas on how we can make Quivr even better. If you're an existing user and you listen to this and you have questions, you want to learn how Alan is doing something that he's doing, save his inbox. Don't bother him. Come to office hours, ask me and Will. We'll do our best to help you, point you in the right direction. If you're not a Quivr user and you're wondering, is this really as good as Alan says it is? Don't worry. We still are accepting new customers, I'm pretty sure. So come schedule a demo, come hang out with me, come hang out with Will, and let's see what Quivr can do for you in your practice.